Hello everybody, Ron here, W7DOA, Whiskey 7 Delta Oscar Alpha, continuing our series on DMR radio. In the first videos we talked about what DMR radio actually is and how it works. In the second video we talked about where we get the information needed to create our code plug and put the correct information into our radio. In this video we'll be talking about actually getting into the software, becoming familiar with it, modifying a few things, kind of getting the software set up for us to go through and quickly program a whole bunch of channels. So in the last video we talked about where we get our information, and we are kind of focused on a repeater that's near me so that we can test it when we're all done. We give you some instructions on how to get information for your local area. So you would follow this video, only use the information for your own local area. We are kind of focused around this repeater, excuse me, down out of Dillon, Montana. It's about 40 miles away from me. And the frequencies that we got for that were 444.100, which is the repeater's transmit frequency. That will be our receive frequency. And 449.100, 5 megahertz above that, that will be our transmit frequency. That's the repeater's receive frequency, if that makes sense. Color code 2 is the color code on that repeater. The talk groups that we want to deal with are Montana statewide talk group, which is the talk group number 3130, MPRG2, which is 31302, Bozeman-Gallatin Valley, which is 31303, and then there's an 8 cluster, and those will all be on time slot 1. And if we remember on the website that we looked at in the last video, time slot 2 only is supposed to have 31301 on it, per request of the repeater owner. So that's how we'll set up our radio. That way it will mesh nicely with what the repeater owner has set up and how they have it working. Additionally, I have my Anytone radio here. It is ready to go, and we have a programming cable right here ready to go, and we have our software up on the computer here. So let's go ahead and dive into it and get started and see where this takes us. Alright, so here's our software in the computer that we have. On the left hand side, we'll just start at the top. There's this public channel here, or this public area I should say, and it has channels in it. That's where our channels will all be listed out. Every single channel in this radio will be in here. Next below that is the zones. That's where our zones will be, where our channels are stored in groups that make them usable and accessible to us. Below that is a scan list. We're not going to deal with that too much on this video, but it's right there. There is an FM channel. Oddly enough, this little radio will listen to your FM broadcast radio, and if you wanted to program some channels in there, that's where you would do that. Optional settings, there is some information in there. We'll tweak just a little bit of stuff in this video, but for the most part we're going to leave that alone for another video. The radio ID the radio ID list is, in the first video we talked about going to radioid.net and getting your digital radio ID. That's where this would go, is right here in this radio ID list. And then the talk groups, of course, are the talk groups that we want to use in DMR radio. So that's kind of a breakdown of what is in this radio. Below that, in the digital area, there's a digital contact list here. This will hold from no digital contacts to 200,000, and that is 200,000 contacts that I do not want to type in by hand. So we will go through how to import that list so that you can, I think currently somewhere around 160, 170,000 digital contacts worldwide. We'll talk about how you can import that in without having to hand type all of that. That will be pretty helpful. Down here in the analog section below that, there's not really a whole lot in there that is used for amateur radio. That would be for like 2-tone paging or 5-tone paging, DTMF settings that ID who that radio is in the analog setting. Most of that stuff is not used in amateur radio, so there's not really a whole lot down there that we will be dealing with. So the first thing we want to do is put in our radio ID. Actually, before we get started, what we want to do is up here in this model section, there's a model information, and it pops up what model your radio is set to or what mode it's set to. This has to match your radio, otherwise it will not accept a code plug. So here's the easy way to do this. Go ahead and take your radio, and we will pop back out of here. Go ahead and take your radio, plug in the programming cable, get it plugged into your computer there. You'll hear it chirp. It says that it's plugged in. So right here there is a set comm up here in this top left hand corner. Set comm brings up a box. There's another place you can get to it. Right below that there's 3 little icons. There's an arrow pointing to a computer, this little icon there, and then there's an arrow pointing to a radio. The one in the center also will set your COM port. Now this is the COM port. You may have more things on your computer and there may be several COM ports there. This is the COM port that appears or disappears when you plug and unplug your radio. Alright, so this computer set up pretty basic. I don't have a lot of other stuff there, so this is the only COM port that I see available. Next up, we will go and push this button that says read from the radio. Up here in the program there's also another place you can do that. It says read from the radio. Either one of those will work just fine. It will ask you if you want to save it. Then it says, do you want to read from the radio? Yes, we do. And in this case we just want to read other data. We don't want to do the digital contact list right now. So we click OK, and it reads real quick through the radio. Now, what is on this screen is what's on your radio, and the model information here will now match what your radio is set to. So that's the place that we need to start. At this point, we can now go up here into the File section and click New. All data will be reset. Okay. And so now we have a brand new clean code plug that has nothing in it but our model number matches. That's the quickest and easiest way to match up your code plug with the model of radio that you have. I'm going to go ahead and get my radio out of the way here. And one of the first areas that we need to start working on is the radio ID list down here. This is the ID that we talked about in the first video, where you would go to radioid.net and apply for and get a digital ID. This is where we will put it in. We'll just put it in slot 1. And then we will name it my call sign. This is my digital radio ID, unique to me, and so you would put your own radio ID in there as well. You can put in a whole list of radio IDs, so if it is, say, a club radio where several people would be using it, or perhaps your spouse also has an amateur radio license, or your friend uses your radio, you could put their radio ID in there as well. And then as you're programming channels, you would be able to pick which person was using that particular channel. All right, the next place that we need to go is talk groups. So we'll double click that, and there it's all empty. There's nothing in there, so we'll just pick the first one and we'll write over the top of it And the first one that we are going to do is Montana statewide. That is a group call, and that is the DMR ID of 3130, and I don't want to put any call alerts on it. That is a group call. So our first talk group is programmed into it, or into the software. We'll do the next one, and the next one we will do is MPRG1. That's also a group call. That group is 31301. We'll click next. Instead of closing it and opening it, we can click next. MPRG2, it's a group call. That's 31302. Okay. And then we'll do Bozeman-Gallatin Valley. That is a group call. That is 31303. We'll do next. That will give us 4. So let's do the last one. Is one that I put in pretty much all of my zones, and that is Parrot. That is not a group call. That is a private call, and that ID is 9990. I don't want any alerts on that. Basically, what Parrot does is you transmit. It goes out to the Brandmeister servers. It records your voice, and then once you're done transmitting, we'll turn around and send that back to you. That's a quick and easy way to test whether or not you have your programming correct, and it's also a quick and easy way to make sure everything's working fine. It looks like on this one I misspelled that, so we'll try this again. MPRG, this should be 2. Alright, so now they're all spelled correctly and we have the IDs over here. And they're all group calls except this Parrot call, and that is a private call. So another thing that you could do is you could put in another group or another contact here that is your friend. For instance, I don't know, you might put in their call sign, whatever their call sign would be there. You would change that to a private call, and then you would put in their radio ID, their radio that they use over here in this radio ID list right here. That's the ID that you would put in there, and what that would allow you to do is have a direct conversation between you and that person, and that's it. So that is possible in contact lists. We won't be doing that in here, so we'll click cancel. So anyway, we have some group calls and a private call. We are now ready to start programming some channels. So we'll go back up here to the channel tab on the left hand side. We're just going to delete these. You could program over the top of them, and that's fine too. I just delete them so that it's nice and clean when I start. We want to actually program a couple different things in here because I want to illustrate that we can mix digital and analog channels in the same zone. So what we're actually going to start with is the 2 meter national calling frequency. So we'll just say 2 meter calling. Of course, the receive frequency is 146.520. Transmit frequency is 146.520. That is actually an analog channel. It's not a digital DMR channel. This radio will do both analog and digital. A couple things just happened on the screen, and I want to point them out to you. We switched this to analog, so this whole area down here lit up, and we can now make changes in that area down here because this is the analog box. If we were to change this to digital, this area would go away. It would turn light gray. We could not change anything in there, but this area over here activated. So this is the digital area. So when we're doing a digital channel, we'll be working here. When we're doing an analog channel, we'll be working here. This is an analog channel. On the calling frequency, we don't have any CTCSS tones, so we'll leave that all blank. Since we don't have CTCSS tones, the only squelch mode we have available is carrier, and then there are no other optional signals that we want on that. So this channel is done. We can click OK. To program an analog repeater, we would do the same thing. I am going to name this channel Mountain because that's where this particular analog repeater is. The frequencies for that, let's see, I have them written down here. 146.76. Again, this is 2 meter, and so the 2 meter offset, standard 2 meter offset, is 600 kilohertz. So the transmit frequency is 146.16. Again, we see this is lit up, but when we change this to analog again, this will gray out and this area will light up again. Mountain, transmit power is high, 25 kilohertz wide because it's a wideband amateur radio channel. Busy lock, we'll just leave that off right now and we won't mess with the scan list. We need to encode, or when we push to talk, we need to send CTCSS tones. So we will turn this onto CTCSS, which opens up another box over here, and we will change that to 107.2 because that's the CTCSS tone for this particular repeater. Now this channel is done. I do want to go back to the calling frequency one here. I skipped this. The bandwidth needs to be at 25 kilohertz wide. Again, that is for the amateur 2 meter area. We can run 25 kilohertz wide. So we click OK. Now we have an analog simplex frequency programmed and we have an analog repeater programmed in. So let's go ahead and start with our digital ones, and we will open up this next one. We are going to call this Montana Statewide. The repeater frequency, of course, is 444.100. Our transmit frequency is 449.100. No frequency correct. This is a digital channel. This repeater is about 40 miles away from me, so I will want to run on high power to make sure that I can get there on a handheld. The bandwidth for DMR is 12.5 kilohertz wide. Even though we're using it in the amateur radio frequencies, the standard for DMR is narrowband or 12.5 kilohertz wide. So we will leave that alone. The transmit permit, we're going to change that to same color code. The options are always channel free, different color code, and same color code. And I haven't really noticed a lot of difference to that. The same color code basically says it will allow you to transmit if the color code matches. This is really how polite you want your radio to be. If you pushed always, it would always transmit no matter what, and it may cause some problems with, if you don't have your programming just right, your radio will still program, or will still transmit, excuse me, and then things won't work down the road and you'll be like, why is it not working? And then you get frustrated. So if you just change that to same color code, it will only transmit if the color codes match on the repeater. Alright, scan list, we're going to leave that alone. We'll do that in another video. So this is a digital channel, so we will be in this area over here. This is my radio ID. The color code for this repeater is color code 2, so we will change that. This Montana Statewide Talk Group, if you remember on the last video when we were looking at their website for the MacPass repeater group, they requested that everything be on time slot 1 except MPRG1. Well, this is our Montana statewide, so it will need to be on time slot 1. So we'll leave that there. And we will leave the receive group alone. We'll deal with the receive group in another video. That turns into some really cool stuff that this radio can do. However, in the group contact list up here, we will have to make sure that we are selected as Montana statewide, which we are. So this channel is now done. We can click OK, and at this point I will exit out of that channel because I want to do something that will speed up this whole programming thing quicker. All of the talk groups that we have are the identical channel because we're going to the same repeater. We're just using a different talk group, remember. So what I will do is I will copy this and then I will paste it 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I have 4 identical channels. Well, I don't want them completely identical. I want to change the group in them. So I will go to this first one here is already done. The second one, I will go back into it. We're going to change this to MPRG1. I'm going to leave everything the same except I'm going to change the talk group there, and then MPRG1 needs to be on time slot 2, remember. So we will change that to time slot 2. This channel is done. We can go next and go to the next one. This one will be MPRG2. We will change the talk group. And the reason why I did Montana statewide first is because it is on time slot 1 and everything else is on time slot 1 except MPRG2 or MPRG1. And so there's only one that I need to change the time slot on. All the rest of them, all I have to change is the contact. So I changed that contact. It's on time slot 1. We're good. The next one will be Bozeman-Gallatin Valley. I will change that one to the Bozeman-Gallatin Valley call. And a double click is what selects that group. See where we're at here. Next, and this is the last one that we did. So this one we are going to change to Parrot. And we will change our talk group to Parrot. And now it's done, so we can click OK. So we have now just programmed 7 channels, and it only took us a few minutes to do it. And that is all of the talk groups that I will want on the digital DMR repeater and an analog repeater and the national calling frequency. That's our 7 channels. It only took us a couple minutes to do it. At this point, we go to our zone, and I'm going to create a zone. I can create a name for that zone. This is in the Dillon area, so I'm going to name it Dillon. And then all of these channels, I would move over to this side, which essentially puts them into the zone. Just to go through that one more time, we'll move them all back. And we select one, and then we move it over. And now we could put these in a different order, so maybe I wanted to do that one, and then I wanted to do that one, and then I wanted to do my repeater, and I would put it in, and then I want to do the statewide calling frequency, then I want to put in Gallatin Valley, and then I want to put in my Parrot last. Now if I decide that over here I want to change this order because it's not in the order that I really want it, I could say, oh, I guess I want my analog repeater closer to the top of my channel list, so I can highlight it, and then over here on the right hand side I can move it up or I can move it down, however I want it. So we'll do the 2 meter calling frequency at the top of the list, we'll do the analog repeater right below that, and then our digital channels below that. This is how it will appear on your radio as you turn the channel knob. So we can click OK. Our zone is done. See, what else do we need to change? That is the absolute bare minimum that you can put into a radio and make it operate. So let's go ahead and program it and see how that works. So we'll grab our radio again. We got the radio. We still have the programming cable plugged into the side of it. We are going to plug it into our computer here. We hear the little chime that says that it's connected. And now we will double check our COM port 3. That is okay. And then we will click the write to the radio button. It will ask if you want to write the data to the radio. Click OK. This other data tab here is the one that does everything in your radio except the digital contact list, which we will do in a different video. Click OK. Yep. You can't open the COM port. We'll unplug it and plug it back in. The other data is checked. Click OK, and it writes to the radio. All right. So now at this point, our radio is programmed and ready to go. Let's see if it works. All right, we are on the, I'm going to turn this down just a little bit. Actually, I'm going to change channels. So what happened on there is we have a 2-meter national calling frequency with no CTCSS tones on it, and we did not set the squelch. So let's go back into our programming software real quick and fix that, and it will only take us a second. We will plug the radio back in to our programming channel, or into our programming plug. And down here in the optional settings, right here on the left-hand side, it says optional settings. We'll go in there. And we want to go to this tab up here that says Other. And then about halfway down on this side on the left, it says Squelch Level A and Squelch Level B. We're going to set that at about a 2. You may have to play with that for your individual area. Again, squelch level on both A and B is set to about a 2. And then if you start getting some other problems, you may have to tweak that just a little bit. You can also, so we'll click OK, and then we will go back to writing. We write that back to the radio, other data. We click OK. It writes again. And now our radio is programmed. Again, it's booting back up. And this time it is on the 2-meter calling frequency, and we're not getting all that squelch noise because we have adjusted the squelch level. It is possible to adjust the squelch level on the radio. So this button here on the right hand side, it says menu. We will go into that. We will go down to settings, radio set. I'm kind of doing this backwards in the camera here. I'm going to go up. We'll go up a long ways. Analog squelch level. We will select that. And there we will see that it's on 2 that we put into the programming software. But we could go back up and click select off. And we immediately get that squelch level again. So we go back into it. You can go 1, and 1 seems to be enough to knock that squelch level down here. you might want to set it just a little bit more, so that as you're driving around and you get into noisy areas with maybe neon lights or some other electrical noise, it doesn't break squelch on you. Or if you're in an area where you are having problems, you can go into your radio and adjust that from there. Now to get out of here, we can hit the back button multiple times until we get back out, or we can hit the pound button down here at the bottom, and it takes us right back out. So other than that, our radio is set up and ready to go. Let's go ahead and test this. Remember, I'm trying to hit a repeater that is 40 miles away. We will try the parrot setting, the parrot channel. So there it is on our radio screen, the Dylan zone, and the channel is parrot, and we are trying to hit a repeater that is 40 miles away. Here we go. W7DOA testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. W7DOA testing on the parrot. We'll wait a minute and it'll come back. W7DOA testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. W7DOA testing on the parrot. All right, so that was a little bit quiet. We can go back into our optional settings again, and in here, in the volume audio, we can set the maximum volume anywhere from indoors, which is pretty quiet, all the way up to 8. We can set the max headset volume from indoors all the way up to 8. And then we can also, if people are telling us that our voice is sounding pretty quiet or is not very loud, we can go in and adjust the mic gain and the enhanced speech quality. For most of the repeater systems that we deal with, it is recommended that that is left off, because if the repeater system isn't set up to use this particular enhanced speech quality, it actually makes it sound worse. So as a general rule, we just leave that set off. So anyway, there's some settings in there that you can adjust volume and how your radio sounds. All right, well, that will get you going and get you started with the absolute bare necessities to get this radio up and running. In the next videos, we'll go in and we'll start customizing and tweaking some of these features a little bit more and making the radio even better. All right, again, my name is Ron, W7DOA, and in the next video, let's go ahead and work on a scan list in the next video. So that will be coming up, and the scan list is pretty easy. We'll probably group the scan list along with the receive group lists together, because they kind of go hand in hand. So other than that, we'll see you on the next one, 73, and have a good day.